make reviewer 2 your friend. The reviewer 2 gets a lot of bad rap because they seem to be the impossible, difficult person. Are they predatory journals? Because if they are, you don't want to put your work in there. If they go down, your work goes down with those journals. In this Q&A video, I'm going to address a question from a postdoc student in South Africa, and they would like to know about the distinction between the quality of work versus the quality of the journal, and whether it matters if you have quality work in a poor quality journal and vice versa. So the question reads, how do we define quality actually? Can I have a good quality paper in a bad journal and vice versa? Which is better? This is a very interesting question because I think there have been multiple discussions in many institutions or at least countries about quality of output versus the quality of journals. And I think there have been changes, for example, in the UK system where sometimes they actually have to read the articles in order to determine their quality and not solely depend on where they have been published. So there clearly is a distinction that is increasingly being recognized in terms of that. But I think, having said that, these are the things that I think are important when you are thinking about the quality of your work versus the quality of the journal, which becomes the home for that work. The first bit of advice is that you have to strive for alignment as much as possible. So this means that for yourself, you should have some understanding of what the true value of your work is. You have to have some kind of system or mechanism for determining if the quality is good enough for a specific type of journal or if it might not be good enough for another type of journal. And how can you know this? I think the two main measures that would be useful is, for example, how novel are the ideas that you are presenting? So some journals will lean more towards very novel insights that are generated. Although my experience also working with top journals is that sometimes they're a bit more careful about extremely novel, radical things. So it could be that the work is good, but it might be too radically innovative for a specific top-tier journal. So that's a balance that you will have to strike, and you'll have to figure out how it works within your own field. And then the second measure is the rigor. So yes, you have an interesting finding, but what processes were involved in generating this piece of work? If you think that methodologically there are certain flaws or limitations, then it could be that you have to aim a bit lower. So know the value of your work. And then based on this, you are going to be able to determine what is a good journal to put this work out in. A second thing that I think is also important when it comes to this, I think underlying the question that you have asked is how much rejection should I subject myself to, essentially, when it comes to the work that I put out. My general rule on this is that do not exclude yourself automatically. If you have work that you think is worth something and you think it deserves to be in a particular journal, then put it out in that journal. In the worst case, if you get rejected, you're going to get good feedback that's going to allow you to develop the paper better, because your interest is in producing your best piece of work, because once it goes out there, it's out there forever. So once you become comfortable with the idea of rejection, and the rejection rates are really high in the good journals, you are going to be much better at not excluding yourself, and you'll be more willing to take those chances, and you will also be very good at using the opportunity that comes with the feedback that comes from those types of journals. And related to this, I would say make reviewer 2 your friend. The reviewer 2 gets a lot of bad rap because they seem to be the impossible, difficult person. But most times, if you just take a step back and listen to what they're thinking, they are more interested in the fundamentals. They can help you to rethink about your problem in a way that's going to make it even more valuable. So whenever you get that reviewer that just seems to go in a different direction, that's the reviewer to pay attention to. Because if you actually also do it well in terms of understanding what they are saying, you could actually get an idea for another piece of research that you could develop as well. So once you do these things, you should be able, in general, to have a good alignment between the quality of your work versus the quality of the journal that you will go in. And yes, there's that caveat that sometimes, for whatever reasons, your work doesn't seem to land well with the top journals, then go for the next best journals that will be willing to receive your work. And I think in general, at least if I think about my own field, a lot of the seminal work that was groundbreaking is in the middle tier journals. Not the lowest, not the most bottom, but at least middle tier, decent enough that people will take them seriously. That's where you see the bulk of the citations, actually. So if you will try these things and they don't work, so you cannot get the alignment that you desire between the quality of your work and the quality of your journal, then there's some things that you need to consider in order to be able to move on. The first is you have to be decisive but not deceitful. So what I mean by that is that sometimes it can turn out that the work is not as valuable as you initially thought. So if that is the case, you do not have to keep trying to sell it at the value that you had expected it would be, but you have to be honest about what it's actually really worth, and you might have to go to lower tier journals in order to get it out. Just strengthen it to the best of your ability, and then just make sure that you are transparent in the disclosure of the limitations related to this work, because this can also even become a foundation for you to do bigger, more serious work in the future. So it could be that at the end of the reevaluating process, you decide that it's worth trying, but aiming lower. But sometimes you can also decide that maybe it's time to park this, at least for now. And then that is fine. Then you find something else in your pipeline and you work on it while you figure out what to do with this piece of work. Something else that can also help if you're not able to get the alignment between the quality of the work and the quality of the journal is to have a minimum standard. So which journals will you be absolutely not willing to consider under any circumstances? And this could be based on some indications that you get from the field. So what do your peers actually think about those journals? Objectively, are they predatory journals? Because if they are, you don't want to put your work in there. If they go down, your work goes down with those journals. Sometimes, though, it can also happen that your work is ahead of its time. I've heard stories of people who had to park papers for 10 years and they submitted them in exactly the same form 10 years later and they were well received. And those things are really difficult to know and gauge. Sometimes it's just a question of following your own instinct. And then sometimes you're just unlucky. Maybe it didn't work out with this particular journal or with this particular reviewer team. If you believe in the work, then just keep making the effort to get it out. So the next time that you have to make a decision between the quality of your work versus the quality of the journal, maybe because there's a time pressure to publish, these are the things that you should remember. Make sure that you know the quality of your own work. You have to know whether your work stands a good chance in a particular journal or not, and then you have to act accordingly. Also, do not automatically exclude yourself. So some journals are very intimidating because of the rejection rate and maybe how long it takes to publish or who typically publishes there. But if you think you have a chance, then put it in there. In the worst case, you are going to get feedback that's going to help you to improve the work further. Also make reviewer to your friend. So when you get the reviews that you were not expecting, just spend time dwelling on the ones that were most critical and try to figure out what they are saying. That is also, again, ultimately going to help you with your work. If this doesn't work in terms of being able to get the alignment in terms of the quality of your work versus the quality of the journal, then you have to go back to the drawing board and you have to think about what's the true value of the work. Sometimes the work is just ahead of its time. You might want to sit it out a bit before you put it out again. Sometimes it's lacking in some fundamental ways and you might have to lower your standards, put it in another journal. But once you do that, make sure you have a minimum standard for yourself. So develop some kind of understanding of the journals to avoid in your field and the journals that are promising in your field, and try to position yourself or your work in such a way that at a certain moment in the future, this work will be picked up again and it will have the impact that you always intended for it to have.